Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Welcome to another installment of ISV Success Live. My name is Brian Galicia, and I lead our Dynamics Global ISV business here. It's always an honor and pleasure to have ISVs join me on these Monday calls to talk about all the amazing capabilities and outcomes they help solve. But even better when we have repeat guests come back on the show to talk about new innovation and capabilities and also success that they've been having in our ecosystem. So Richard is no stranger to that. Gosh, we were just talking in the pre-show how long it's been. It's been a little over a year. And of course, what's changed, one of the biggest things that's changed is he actually has a baby boy. So that's one big difference since the last time we spoke. But before we get to him, one of the things, of course, some housekeeping items in case you've never come across this, and this is your first experience. We always want to start out with celebrating people joining live. And so if you have, let me put this on the ticker window below. If you are watching anywhere around the world, maybe you're watching from the UK where Richard's doing the show today. You're watching from the US, and of course, I'm based in Seattle, Washington, or anywhere in between. We'd love to celebrate you and do a quick shout out. So if you just want to type in the LinkedIn window where you're watching from towards the beginning of these introductions, we'll do a quick shout out. The second is that if there are any questions that you might have and something that Richard says in the conversation sparks a question, also feel free to put that in the LinkedIn window, and happy to ask Richard a live question and have him address it in real time. And finally, as you are listening to the conversation, whether live or replay, if you want to utilize one of the emoji icons, like, support, etc., that gives us the ability to understand that the content that we're sharing is actually resonating with the people watching. So without further ado, Richard, welcome back to the show. It's good to have you and good to see you again. So why don't you share a little bit about, remind people, what do you do at Seer 365? And then because I've already asked you the question of what's one thing not on your LinkedIn profile, I'm going to switch it up and say, what's the most recent movie you've watched that you really enjoyed? And so people can potentially think about that and go, oh, I should be watching that movie. So let's kick it off with that.
Thanks, Brian. Yeah, so Richard Hughes, I'm the Partner Strategy Director at Seer 365. So it's way of background. I am nearly at 20 years of Dynamics, so I'll be 20 years in January. So I started in Dynamics just after the acquisition. Checkered past of working both at Microsoft. My first role was as a Dynamics, what's now known as PDM, PAM back in the day. And working for partners. But really my big job is right now looking after partners, talking to partners, having conversations with partners all around the world, finding out what's going on with them, the challenges they're having, and seeing how we can help both SI partners and ISVs and GSIs, so the whole partner ecosystem around business applications. As far as the most recent movie, I watched The Creator last night. So I didn't feel I was having enough conversations about AI. So I wanted to watch a movie about AI as well. So yeah, great movie. Highly recommend it to everybody. If you're a fan of Blade Runner or any of those sort of sci-fi type movies, looking into the near future, then definitely well worth a watch. Great movie.
I love it, Richard. Yeah, I personally have not watched it, but of course, here in the US, you see a lot of commercials that are denoting the movie. And because, of course, we're now living in a world where generative AI is like front and center. Like, you can't have a conversation, especially in a business setting, without understanding what people are doing in that space. So it's very apropos And I look forward to watching it. Also, really cool effects like the girl or something that they're trying to save or do something with. I'm always amazed at the special effects they do, because you look at the head and there's like a open area that looks like something's happening in the head. But anyway, let's do a quick shout out. So Darren, I don't know why sometimes LinkedIn does this, but again, I know I see you on the LinkedIn feed, but you show up anonymous. But Darren, thank you so much for watching from live from Austin,
the
Texas.
Englishman in Texas.
Yeah. Okay. I love it. So why don't we start with kind of the question that is one of my favorite ones to start out with, Richard, for those who didn't get it to watch our conversation a little over a year ago. Maybe you can describe a little bit about what are the business outcomes that Seer 365 helps to solve, because your IP is it's one of those things that is very different than some of the other ones we've hosted on the show, because not only do you impact potential end customers, buyers, but also you can impact our partner ecosystem, meaning software integrators actually doing deployments inside, or potentially doing deployments inside of Microsoft customers for the Dynamics platform. So maybe you can spend a few minutes talking about who Seer 365 is and the business outcomes you help to solve.
So I think the best way of starting that conversation is really where we came from. So a lot of the team, or all the team from Seer, have come from the SI background. So really it's that Dynamics background of the whole challenge around that customer journey from, is Dynamics the right product for me, all the way through to deployment and support of that customer. And really, if you look at that journey hasn't changed from the beginning of the business applications world, right? So 30, 40 years ago, whatever it is now. So what we try to do is to bring digital transformation to that journey. And we work with Microsoft Dynamics partners all around the world. So we're now fortunate enough to be working with over 50 partners around the world, and really looking at that whole journey from the first bit of, we refer to as qualify. So a customer comes onto your website, and within 5 minutes, they can see, is Dynamics right for them? So they can get a high level overview of, is it going to do what they need, and how much is it going to cost, and how long is it going to take? Which in effect are the three big questions they've got. Then we move them through and have that deeper dive, what would traditionally be done as part of a pre-sales motion with a customer, really looking at that, and within a very short space of time, so between 6 to 16 hours, you can really get a deep understanding of what the customer is looking for, and then it will be able to give you a gap fit against core product, the services estimate and cost, and also we calculate all the Dynamics licenses as well, which can typically be difficult. So if you look at some of the biggest ones we've done, we worked with a customer that was looking to have a new ERP system in 180 countries around the world. And we were able to take 40 of those countries and do that activity in 2 weeks rather than the 9 months they were planning on doing it. So it really accelerates that. Then we move to more of the analysis and design phase of the project. So again, accelerating that, so partners are able to start the project immediately as when they've signed the customer, rather than potentially waiting for 3 to 6 to 9 months before starting the project, which is where a lot of partners are now because of the lack of capacity in the Dynamics world. Now, as part of that, we also bring in ISVs. So we're identifying ISVs that can work with those customers to help fit those challenges that the customer's having. And that really, we've got a lot of ISVs now on the platform, and it's really helping them to have visibility within that customer opportunity and make sure that the partners they're working with, the SI partners, have really got the latest information, so they're able to service their opportunities a lot better as well.
What a great overview, Richard. And it's great because there's some of the things you just nuanced in there, I think, are somewhat new since our last conversation. Maybe you can explain that a little bit. Yeah. So your comment of bringing in not just the software integrators who are doing these implementations to help a buyer through that journey. I love how your example of taking an opportunity and a deployment and shrinking that down because they can visually see all the goodness that you talked about, from the envisioning side to what type of licenses does an organization need? Because that is a big challenge sometimes, is having a PhD in licensing and understanding if I'm going to use this module, what I see. But what caught my attention, of course, because my team and I lead our ISV business apps business, is what you just said at the end, which is the ISV side. So what, maybe you could describe a little bit, because now the IP has been enhanced. Where would that question surface up? So if I'm in a scenario around CE or F&O or Power Platform, what's an example or a few examples of questions that you ask that then would say, oh, you're trying to do this. This is something that Microsoft inherently does not do first party out of the box, which is why we have a vibrant ecosystem. So maybe you could describe that, because we have a lot of ISVs that listen to the show, of course, and that gives them an opportunity to go, wow, maybe I should reach out to Richard or the Seer 365 team to ensure that my IP and the things that I do are surfaced up in your tooling. So maybe you could talk about that a little
Sure.
bit.
Look, and we've got Darren on the call, so we'll use XE as an example,
Okay,
right?
perfect.
So XE are a great partner of ours. Love working with those guys. Although I'm still waiting for my barbecue to be sent from Texas, so maybe this will move that along a little bit. But if you think of a customer, they have got multi-currency requirements. Now, as part of finance supply chain, there's some stuff in there, but it's not going to do exactly what they need based on a business objective that prospect has got. Now, that for us would be highlighted as a gap in the product compared to their requirements. It would then highlight XE as an ISV that they should be looking to work with. That would then come up in the output docs. The output doc gets to a pretty detailed level. So an average customer in a sort of SMC type opportunity would have around 1,500 questions. So it's pretty detailed. That would then get highlighted as a gap compared to their product and to their requirements. Would highlight XE. That would be in the output doc to say, look, you've got a requirement for currency exchange or currency transaction stuff. You should look at xe.com. There would be some information in there around why they should look at the XE add-on for Dynamics. There would potentially be a sort of one pager in the output as well. That would then be highlighted to the SI partner that XE could help fill this gap. And then we would then facilitate that conversation between the SI and XE. That's part of the platform. There's no sort of revenue split or anything else weird going on there. But we would make that introduction, set up the initial call, and get that partnership going. So it just really helps the SI and the ISVs come together on a real live opportunity rather than trying to do it off it would be great if we could work together in the future. This is a live opportunity that the SI has that an ISV like XE could help with.
Gosh, well said, Richard. And I'm excited now because that's a new scenario that, of course, that's why I brought it up as a question that really didn't surface up in our last conversation. And I'm going to reserve that to the end as to having you describe a little bit more as to next steps that if an ISV that comes across and listens to this, the opportunity to partner with Seer 365 to determine, hey, that use case scenario that you talk about with XE, how do you replicate that with the other 1,000+ Dynamics or biz apps partners in our app source that potentially can be serviced where relevant to help with that journey? I love it. So that's a good segue into the next question about ISV Success Live. And of course, when we first started, your IP was recently posted and you've been on this journey for a little over a year now. Maybe we could talk about what's the journey been like. And I will shout out one of the things too, is that video that we showed at the beginning, which we'll show at the end, is actually part of one of the things we were talking about in the pre-show. Was that video was actually part of the benefits that you as a partner in ISV Success Live is getting, which is having a video be created to help, again, articulate what is the value that your IP can bring. So maybe you can talk about the journey, and again, if there's other things that have changed since the last time we spoke a little over a year ago, and how you've taken advantage of that. Maybe that's a good place to start.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, it's been a journey, right? So as you rightly said, we worked with the UK recruit team at the very beginning of Seer. And actually, I should mention today's our third birthday, so of Seer being formed. So that was really important at the beginning to understand how we could work with Microsoft. We're pretty fortunate that the team at Seer have been working with Microsoft a while, but just having the ability to work with what's now the ISV success team to really make sure we were taking advantage of everything. So the business stuff, the technical help, as well as kind of the freebie stuff that you get. So that was awesome. Now we're in the marketplace, and I would say, just as a kind of thing, I think people need to understand that being in the marketplace is the beginning of the journey, not the end. So by doing that, we were then able to work with Microsoft around the world. So we've now got offices in the US, Europe, and Australia, which kind of covers the rest of the world for us. And because we're in the marketplace, those additional countries, so we've now got working with Microsoft in the US, Canada, Mexico, Brazil, Ireland, UK, the Netherlands, doing a lot of stuff in the Netherlands. South Africa is a really big one for us as well as Australia and New Zealand. So we really are working with Microsoft all around the world. And the main point of this is because we're in the marketplace. So that really adds to the ability for Microsoft around the world to work with us. So that's a huge thing. As far as other things, the video, which I hope people think is pretty high quality, I certainly do. That's something that we probably would never have done if it wasn't something that Microsoft were able to help facilitate for us. So we've now got that. We've got a blog post about to come out on the Microsoft website as well. So that's great. But it just all the additional stuff which just really helps facilitate our growth and our visibility for the partner community. We also had a LinkedIn marketing campaign that was paid for by Microsoft as well as part of the benefits. We recently did one in the US, which was very successful, and we're about to do another one in Western Europe and the Nordics. So that again has been facilitated. And really, we're not doing anything kind of crazy here. It's just going through the program, putting the co-sell wins into Partner Center, and really sharing our success with Microsoft, and then getting this additional stuff back. So that's been great. I think as far as next gen stuff as well, we're actually moving the whole platform onto Power Platform. At the moment, it's kind of split between Power Platform and Azure. So we've spent a lot of money to move it onto Power Platform. So that's a big bet for us. And the big bit around there really is to leverage the Power Platform and some of the next gen AI stuff in the platform. And again, that's something that Microsoft are helping us facilitate.
I love it, Richard. And I'm just going to highlight a couple things that you mentioned, which is app source or marketplace, and doing that at scale. And I love how you just articulated the fact that because your solution shows up and it has all the right taxonomy, the right tagging, etc., it's created an opportunity for you to be seen in a lot of markets. And of course, you're based in the UK, but the fact that you can scale, and your point, I love seeing the fact that you're not just in a big market like the US, but a market like LATAM. You mentioned Brazil as a market, and having the localization and that visibility is super valuable. And then I love how you talked about the AI component, well, Power Platform as well. But when you think about that, of course, that comment you made about the movie, etc., but is the scenario that Seer 365 is looking at, is it leveraging potentially Azure OpenAI and or plugins to Copilot, Microsoft 365, or even Dynamics Copilot, or a combination of both? Maybe you can talk a little bit about that.
Sure.
That's the journey that a lot of partners are taking.
I mean, yes is the answer to the question. So we're already using OpenAI within GYDE365. So that's in place now, right? So, but let me give you a potential scenario without giving too much away of future roadmap, which I'm literally going to give away some future roadmap stuff right now. But if you think of RFP response, that's something that partners and Microsoft actually spend a huge amount of time doing, and I emphasize the huge bit there, because if you talk to I was talking to a sales leader at Microsoft, and he was saying that 80% of his team's time is spent responding to RFP. So using something like a Sales Copilot as an example, with our data to be able to respond to an RFP, taking away 80-90% of the effort required to do that, that's definitely something that I could see coming I don't want to say in the near future, but not too far away. And it's just, I think I had a really interesting conversation with somebody at Microsoft a month or so ago, and what they were saying was, when you're thinking about AI, start to use it every day. So I've taken that on board. I'm using GPT-4 as it happens every day now. So use that to try and get your head around it, but also stop worrying about what's possible today and think about, if you could do it, what would that look like? And that for me is things like RFP response, being able to have customers interact with GYDE in a more organic way. So answering questions in sort of simple English rather than having to kind of answer questions in a tick box scenario. That's something. Looking at comparing. This one customer is looking to deploy Dynamics. They're a 500 user manufacturing customer in Kansas City. Sorry, I was watching some NFL last night. Other customers like them have answered questions similar to that. That's more of machine learning than true generative AI, but actually having some of that in there as well. There are definitely scenarios that we're looking to do as well.
Yeah, and thank you for sharing, Richard. Those are great, because those will spark the interest, because every partner in our ecosystem is looking at how to take advantage of it, because you touched upon two amazing areas that our Microsoft is really heavily focused on for our fiscal year that started in July. And again, let me just, for the sake of repeating it, is really two things. And you covered one of them, which is, how do we ensure that every partner is taking advantage of AppSource Marketplace? And there are certain scenarios that we'll acknowledge in the Dynamics world that we're still working on, but in general, taking advantage of that ability to scale through the Marketplace AppSource engine. And then, of course, the second is all things AI related. And you touched upon it, which is great. All these scenarios, and I love how you touched upon the RFP process, because in my former roles at Microsoft, selling and being a sales leader, that is, I don't think that will change, because every single organization is going to go out for bid on something, especially at the big investment that business applications, whether it be CRM or ERP or low code type of scenarios, that is not a minimal investment that organizations are going to undertake. And I love how there's potential scenarios that are going to come across that. I'm going to do a quick shout out. Someone did want to do a congratulations. So Cohen, I know we've had conversations, and I apologize if I'm not pronouncing your Dutch name. Kuhn. Yeah, thank you. Because I can imagine that
you work. He's a good buddy of ours. I've known the extensions team for a long time, and I'm looking forward to their rebrand very soon as well.
Yes, absolutely. We've had Mirabella on the show in the past, and I do a quick shout out to
another good partner of ours. I should also mention.
I love it. I love it. Well, this is an opportunity, like you mentioned with XE. Hopefully, it creates an opportunity, as they mentioned, Darren, that would be an opportunity for that barbecue or whatever you had behind the scenes.
He keeps on promising me that Texas barbecue, but maybe I live too far away.
It's gonna be hard to get fresh barbecue delivered to wherever you live.
Hey, where there's a will, there's a way, my friend.
Absolutely. So last question, or second to last question, with about 6 minutes we have left, and this has been a great conversation, Richard, is what are some of the customer examples? And you teased it out, but maybe you can touch upon what are examples that have that you've seen recently that have really showcased the capability, because your scenarios can span multiple industries, different use case scenarios across CE, Power Platform, F&O, but maybe you can highlight one of your favorite ones that have recently been leveraging Seer.
Sure. And I think, so we've kind of got two kind of customer bases, one significantly bigger than the other. So the main revenue for us comes from our Microsoft partners. So I'll do one example there, and also we work directly with Microsoft where they bring us into opportunities. So I'll kind of do one of each very quickly. So one I think would be a really good example would be Mint. It's a Mint group in South Africa. So they've got one of their sales team, a guy called Dennis. And if Dennis watches this, hello, Dennis. So he works in kind of a lot of Mint is South Africa based, but he works in kind of the rest of Africa. And one of the challenges he had was around pre-sales. So a lack of pre-sales capacity. He's working an opportunity in like Nigeria or Kenya or somewhere, and it's tough for him to do that. But by using GYDE, he was able to have a full sales cycle without having to bring in pre-sales. So we all know that pre-sales is a really tough role to fill in a lot of partners. So a lot of people use consultants, so taking them off billable work to be able to do that. So, that's something where he was able to run many more opportunities without having to increase headcount, even if he could find the budget or the people for that headcount. He was able to run those on his own without having to bring in additional people. So I think that's a really good example, cool scenario where he was able to do a lot more work with less resource. So that's one. And then another one I'll sort of talk to, one of the ones we've done directly on behalf of Microsoft. We can talk about Somerset County Council. So that's a local government in the UK. The reason I wanted to bring that one up is because they had very tight timescales. So they were able to do all the requirements gathering for them as an organization. I think that was about a week or 2 weeks to do in elapsed time, because they were on Oracle. They needed to get off Oracle within a certain time frame. So they were able to use it to get all the requirements done. They were able to get the budget done because we were able to give them an idea of what that budget would look like. And the midpoint, so in the output doc from GYDE365, we do a low, medium, and high example of their budget. And the midpoint was exactly what they ended up paying to, in that case, EY. So it was very accurate, very quick, and it gave a great reference, which I can talk to on this call. But I think two kind of examples: one partner, one customer.
I love it, Richard. And I mean, to highlight what you just said, to summary, like I think the pre-sales aspect is a huge time saving. And I think what that example you talked about, to minimizing, again, for software integrators listening to this conversation, that opportunity that Seer 365 can provide to reduce some of that challenge and burden up front, I think is huge. Because again, when I think about the
unrepeatable.
Yeah,
I think the repeatable is quite an important one, because depending on if you've got a team of pre-sales people or a team of consultants you work with, everybody's going to have a slightly different view of the world. But that way you've got repeatability. So you're not having one person saying it's going to cost $5 million, somebody else saying it's going to cost $500,000, and it's kind of all over the place. You have repeatability across all of it.
I love it, Richard. And you're right, because I mean, these resources at SIs aren't cheap. I mean, when you think about the billable hours that can exist, it's great if that resource can be leveraged for other things, if we can create the repeatability of it and cost savings. And I love your example in public sector, because that just shows the broad spectrum that Seer 365 can impact. Because not only, I'm sure there are specific industries that you've had success in, but the example of being able to be far and wide in impacting implementations, because you're providing this value upfront to help someone along that journey. So with the remaining few minutes we have left, maybe we can talk about next steps. And I do want to give a quick shout out. So Edward, thank you for the comment on the session. I appreciate you listening. Maybe I'm not sure, Richard, if you know.
Yeah,
Edward,
Blue Fort are a partner of ours as well.
Okay.
Big fan of Blue Fort and the work they do. If anybody's not familiar with Blue Fort as well, you should definitely check them out. If you've got any prospects that have got anything around the subscription industry, you should definitely check out the guys at Blue Fort. So yeah, we're doing the 3 for 3 now. We're doing all right. We're doing all right. There's still lots of ISVs we don't work with, but these 3 we happen to.
Yeah, I love it. And thank you for those of you who are supporting this, because that's the beauty of the ecosystem and being part of the Microsoft ecosystem, is the opportunity that this creates across the board. And this is a great example, because we have 3 partners working very closely with Seer and Richard seeing these names. And it's great to have that support. So finally, with the 2 minutes we have left, Richard, maybe you could talk about next steps. Like if you're a Microsoft seller, or in particular, because we have partners on the phone, and I mentioned, going back to that comment you mentioned of connecting the ISVs in the experience when there's a scenario and you're saying, hey, if you're trying to do these things, Microsoft does not do this, so you should consider these scenarios. So maybe you could touch upon a little bit about next steps. How do people learn more? What's the best way to get in contact with Seer 365, et cetera?
Yeah, so I guess the easiest way of doing it is go on to, well, actually, we've got a few bits. So go onto the website, so seer365.com. You can email us at info@seer365.com. And everybody think we've been planning this. We're also at the Community Summit next week in Charlotte. So if any of you based in the US and you're going over to the Community Summit, please get in touch. We'd love to meet up with you. And in a couple of weeks, we'll be in Lyon for Directions EMEA. So I'm particularly looking forward to that one. If anybody's going, it's got some of the best food in France. So definitely check out Lyon and love to meet up with you. So, yeah. Even if you're not sure how we could work with you, just get in touch with us. Let's just have a conversation. We're a pretty friendly bunch, so we'd love to talk to you.
Yeah, I love it. And I put it the aka.ms/Seer365 because that also goes directly to the app sources. And when Richard talked about the scale of getting a marketplace app source, this actually takes you directly to the listing. And I'm going to show Fabio, and thank you, Fabio, for making the time. He also, it's in the feed, but again, seer365.com is a great place to start. So before we end with showcasing the video again from that we showcased at the beginning, Richard, any last parting words before we close out the show?
No, I just want to thank you again, Brian. And also just a final shout out to the UK ISV team. So Jackie Toe, our PDM, just want to say thank you to her for all her work, and Nico, her boss, for all of his help as well. We really wouldn't be where we are without the UK ISV team. So just wanted to thank them as a final bit as well.
I love it. Well, thank you for that shout out, Richard. Yeah, because in certain cases, when we have the opportunity to manage a partner, and Nico and Jacqueline are fantastic. So thank you for making that call out. And if they aren't watching this, I'll make sure that they hear that so that they can hear the verbal.
Well, Jackie's not particularly well at the moment, so I'm trying to get her to drink some chicken soup and get herself better. So.
Okay, good. Fantastic. Well, thank you again, everyone, for either watching live or watching the replay. Again, we do these things every Monday, at least when my schedule permits, and we have an ISV to showcase. If you want to watch past replays and also watch not just this one that we just did with Richard, but the one we did over a year ago, all the ones are just listed on aka.ms/ISV Success Live. You could follow the hashtag ISV Success Live for, again, updates and things that we share regarding the BizApps ISV ecosystem as it relates to Dynamics. But Richard, thank you so much for coming back on stage. Appreciate what you and Seer365 do in the Microsoft ecosystem, and have a great week. And please, for everyone watching this, please enjoy the video that we showcased at the very beginning. Thanks again, Richard.
Thanks, Brian. Bye-bye.